We're going beyond the whistle with George Lynch on lessons from playing for legendary coaches and HBCU heroes supporting student athletes. You are listening to Beyond the Whistle, the podcast that takes basketball coaches beyond the X's and O's to help you grow your network, make a plan for your career, and maximize your influence. Beyond the Whistle is brought to you by McCants Sports, a career management and consulting firm for college basketball coaches. Learn more at mccantsports.com. Welcome to Beyond the Whistle. I'm your host, Odell McCants, and thank you for listening. I'm honored to have a guest on this episode who is a 1993 NCAA men's basketball national championship winner at the University of North Carolina, a 12-year NBA veteran, head coach at Clark Atlanta University, and my friend George Lynch. George, welcome to Beyond the Whistle.
Thanks for having me.
So, George, we've known each other, and I think it's a little over 30 years now. And
Don't tell our age, man.
I know, and I didn't want to take anything for granted. I still do my homework for these interviews, and I learned something about you that I did not know, that you are second all-time in steals at Carolina?
Yeah, I was, well, you know what, man? Kids don't stay in school long enough, so hopefully that record will stay around for about 20 more years.
But man, thinking about all the great guards that came out there, and you as a forward, I knew you were a defensive stopper, but I was shocked to see that.
Yeah, I took a lot of pride in defending, man. Got a story. My stepfather came home one time from the park playing with some bigger guys, and he was like complaining. I was complaining they weren't passing me the ball. And he asked me, he said, "Can you play defense?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you dribble?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, play defense, steal the ball, dribble down the court, and shoot it yourself." So when I played with older guys, I had to learn to defend, bigger, stronger, smaller, quicker guards and players when I was a youth. And I took a lot of pride in it because I didn't have to worry about someone passing me the ball if I didn't get it.
And that's like life, isn't it? Stop complaining and just go get it yourself, right?
Exactly. And I took a lot of pride in that.
And George, I don't expect you to remember this, but when you first came up here to Flint Hill, you were over at my house and you went to dinner with us. And for some reason, I think it was Mother's Day, but I don't quite remember that. I'm not quite sure of that. And I had a neighbor, Alex Aquana, shout out to Alex if he's listening, who was a big college basketball fan. And I wanted to take you over there so Alex could meet you. You could meet Alex. And Alex had a roommate who was not into sports that much. And when we went over there, his roommate asked if you had schools recruiting you too. And you said yes. And he asked you which ones. And you said all of them. And he gave you a look like, who is this kid? Who is this smart Alex? And then Alex went and said, I can't remember the guy's name. He said, "This is George Lynch. He's one of the top 10 players in the country, so he's telling the truth." And I've never forgotten that moment, man, because the look he gave you, I've never forgotten it.
Hey, if we'd have had phones back then, it would have been classic, huh?
I know. So
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was just being honest. I didn't, because when you recruiting, you don't want to leave out the small schools and things like that. So I just said all of them, man. It's hard to say how many schools at that time, but I was getting shoeboxes and shoeboxes of letters.
Yeah, what were you going to do? Yeah, you can't list the whole NCAA. I thought it was the perfect answer. Answer. So, George, thinking about back those days, man, what was that transition for you like coming from Roanoke to join us up here at Flint Hill? I mean, you all at Patrick Henry, you had won a state championship. You had Curtis Blair, who was a great player too, was a crosstown rival of mine. He was at University of Richmond, and I was at VCU, and now Curtis is reffing in the NBA. What was that transition like for you?
It was hard. I only had one family member in D.C. at the time. I had an aunt, but she lived in D.C., and we were in school in Virginia. So it was kind of hard to commute back and forth. So my first couple months, I lived with Coach Vetter. It was Coach Vetter, Kevin Sutton, not Kevin Sutton, but Coach Kevin, and it was tough because, you know, I grew up with three sisters. You know, my mom, you know, I had family around all the time, and to go away to into your junior year at 17 years old, that was a tough deal, and it toughened me up for college because, you know, most guys get to college to get homesick. I was already hardened in that routine of, you know, study hall, weightlifting, practice, you know, sitting in a room and focusing on your schoolwork. So it made that transition easy for me, but dealing with it for the year and a half, it was tough for me. You know, not seeing family, you know, until certain holidays or maybe every other weekend. You know, it was, you know, we didn't have cell phones back then, so it was definitely tough going a few days without speaking to family members.
Yeah, and what about on the court and getting used to Coach Vetter, and then you had another great forward there with Aaron Bain. What was that like on the court for you?
Well, you know, when I left Patrick Henry, we had 5 guys play Division I, but they were all a year ahead of me in class-wise. So my decision to leave Patrick Henry was to continue to play with great players. You know, the difference was the, you know, the practices, the intensity of practice when I got to Flint Hill, because I thought I was in shape, but going through the first 2 weeks of practices, you know, we had a running program, we had individual workouts, then you had practice. Man, it was what I was looking for to help my game continue to rise and improve. But I learned then where I thought I was in shape, I was not in shape, and it just took my game to another level.
I know what you mean, man. Look, you're right. You think you're in shape until you meet Coach Vetter. You think you're working hard. And it took everything to a whole nother level, man.
Oh, yeah. We were in, you know, I tell people when I left Flint Hill my senior year and got on campus at Chapel Hill, I guarantee I was in better shape than everyone else on the team.
I believe it. You know, speaking of Coach Vetter, George, we hear about coaching trees a lot in college, but I don't think people realize Coach Vetter being a high school coach, what his coaching tree is like of former players. And I'm going to go down this list, and if I leave somebody out, if I miss somebody, please let me know, George. But obviously, present company, George Lynch, head coach at Clark Atlanta, Kevin Sutton, assistant coach at University of Rhode Island, Randolph Childress, associate head coach at Wake Forest, Nate James, associate head coach at Duke. You've got Levi Watkins at Ole Miss, Cameron Dollar, former head coach at Seattle and now assistant coach at University of Washington. And then, you know, and then there are guys who are, I think of other guys too, and like Marvin Lewis, who's an associate AD at Georgia Tech. He's not coaching directly, but, you know, but in administration.
Yep.
David Atkins, who didn't play for I think David did play with Coach Vetter. Played for him, coached with him, is now an assistant coach with the Wizards and one of the best player development coaches I think in the country. He's a former assistant coach and national champion at Maryland with their women's program. Alan Stein, who coached with Coach Vetter and coached at DeMatha and is now a big motivational speaker. And if I've left anyone out, please let me know. But what do you think? What do you attribute that to?
Coach Vetter did it the right way. He encouraged guys. He challenged them to learn the game, not just to play it. And it was at the purest form. I mean, he made sure the guys put the work in. He just didn't, because I was a high school All-American coming up there, I had to earn my spot. You know, and that was just my experiences. You know, guys like Randolph Childress came in. He had to earn his spot, fight for everything. You know, he went through the run programs just like, you know, the last guy on the bench. We were all out in the sun running when everybody else was, all our other friends from school were hanging out, driving around, downtown DC. So we learned to respect the game.
Yes. And in addition to Coach Vetter, you have been around some of the greatest coaches and basketball minds of all time. Dean Smith, Larry Brown, Mitch Kupchak as an executive. What have you taken from those experiences that are now part of your coaching philosophy?
I try to treat, like you said, I try to treat all guys fairly. Of course, talent and skill set is going to rise above. But, I don't know if you remember Coach Vetter used to have us cutting his grass and doing yard work around his house, and you get that one shoe. And you have to come back the next week to get the other one. It was slavery back then. But the last man on the bench got one shoe, just like a superstar got one shoe, and that's when you learn to respect your teammates. Your teammates respect you. He did it the right way, And although I wasn't on the team for more than a year and a half, he made sure that I put in the proper respect and earned the respect from my teammates. And he made sure that the teammates welcomed me as a new player with open arms. Even though I was coming in to take someone's minutes and time, I think we all learned to respect each other because we did the hard work before the games together as a team and as a unit.
Yeah. And, I know Coach Smith, I know Coach Vetter modeled a lot of the Flint Hill program after what Dean Smith was doing at North Carolina.
Yes.
And so how was that transition like for you from Flint Hill and Coach Vetter to Dean Smith, and obviously one of the greatest coaches of all time?
Well, it's funny because even at Patrick Henry, my guidance counselor Dick Kepley played at Carolina for Dean Smith.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And my high school coach at Patrick Henry kind of ran a similar offense. Being in that part of Virginia, you either fall at North Carolina. You were either a North Carolina fan or you were a Virginia fan. And there was a lot of Tar Heel fans and a lot of coaches. I came up starting at Patrick Henry with Woody Deans, and then Coach Vetter, and then, of course, playing for Coach Smith. The terminology was the same: make the open pass, screen for your teammates, just good team basketball. So that transition when I got to Carolina, although I was a McDonald's All-American, I was on a team with several other McDonald's All-Americans: King Rice, Rick Fox, Scott Williams. You learn to sacrifice in the betterment of the team, and that was, I think, out of all the things that they taught, all three coaches, they wanted us to play team basketball. So that transition going to North Carolina, fitting in, was not a big issue for me because it wasn't about me; it was about the team.
And what have you carried over from that to your coaching today?
I try to treat everybody fairly. Even, my first year at Clark, you had guys, when new coach come in, a lot of guys want to transfer, a lot of guys, want to be fair opportunity. And that's what I told the guys. I said, listen, yes, the previous coach gave me some ideas who the players were, but all you guys have a clean slate to compete for playing time. And if you earn your time, you will play. It's about winning. And I had a guy who didn't make the team for the previous coach, walked on, ended up starting 75% of the games. And this year, his second year on the team, at times was the best player on the floor. So, the philosophy is if you put the work in and you earn the time, you will play. And that's one thing you took from Coach Smith, you took from Stu Vetter, things you do off the field. Are you getting your classwork done? I had 9 guys out of my 13 have a 3.0 GPA or better.
Great.
So and I told guys, I said, it ain't just what you do on the court. If you handle your business in the classroom, I will reward you with playing time. And guys appreciated that.
So you just finished your second year at Clark Atlanta. How did you first prepare when you first got there? I know you talked about speaking with the guys and having a clean slate, but from a strategy and building the program, I guess, perspective, how did you prepare for a new institution and a new league?
Well, the only thing that was new for me was just being that first chair. I've been around winning basketball. Like you said, in high school, we won the state championship. Playing for Coach Vetter, we were top 5 in the country. So I've been around what winning basketball looks like. I've been around coaches who's always won. My high school coach at Patrick Henry, Woody Deans is a Hall of Fame coach. Stu Vetter is a Hall of Fame coach. Coach Smith is a Hall of Famer. Larry Brown was a Hall of Famer. So all the great experiences or the good experiences throughout my basketball career, I kind of pulled those aside and said, this is what I like. And then being a player on both sides, player and assistant coach, a strength conditioning coach, you see the reaction of players. I know I have my own experiences from how I reacted from the things I like coaches doing and things that I didn't like a coach to do. And I put all those things aside. I was always that type of player who sacrificed part of my game for the betterment of the team.
Mm-hmm.
I scored 20-something points a game in high school, got to Carolina and never scored where I averaged about, 12. So I had to sacrifice for the betterment of my team so that my teammates could reach their full potential. And I was by seeing it from that perspective, that it's not all about me, it made an easy transition for me to communicate with my players.
So going into year 2, what did you take away from year 1 that you may have changed, improved on the program and yourself as a coach?
Well, I had to manage time. You don't get like 14, 15 scholarships like most schools. My first year I was playing with 5 scholarship players that was actually on the floor. 1 or 2 of them had injuries, so they weren't completely healthy. So you're really playing every game with 3 scholarship players, and then you're trying to fill it in with role players, guys who walk on. Just hopefully you think they know enough about the game that can help you. Then I went to into my second year, and I basically played with 2 scholarship players the whole year because of injuries. One guy who was a 4.0 student coming out of high school enjoyed Atlanta too much, in second semester he was ineligible. So now I'm dealing with a couple guys with partials, 2 full scholarship guys who basically played 40 minutes the whole season, and because of a player like myself, I was that type of glue guy. I was able to fit guys into their roles, and then because I watched the way Coach Smith and the way Larry Brown coached, you emphasize practice on fundamentals within the offense and defense. You always stressed about team defense, even though you're guarding an individual, but you're not on the island by yourself. Try to get the guys to care about each other. And then for that, nowadays you can only practice 8 hours a week. So for that hour and a half, the 2-hour practice that you're able to have, try to maximize as much as you can and make sure the guys could grasp what you're teaching. You don't want to move so fast that guys aren't picking the concept up. I'd rather have, 5 sets with 8 different options and have 40 plays than have 120 plays and nobody know your offense.
Mm-hmm.
So because I didn't have the maximum scholarship guys, and when I say scholarship guys, guys you go out and recruit, athletically there, basketball IQ is there. You almost have to simplify your offense and defense, keep it simple so your team can have success. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got away with it my second year.
And what have you learned about yourself after 2 years of being head coach?
Well, I have to learn that I have to have more patience.
Okay.
even though, I'm going on 50 now, you still think that you can make plays when you see them on the court, or you may see it happening, before it happens. And then you have to understand that, look, you're dealing with Division II guys. There's a reason they play in Division II. It may be talent-wise. It may be basketball IQ-wise. It just may be a lucky break here and there. But majority of these guys, they still love basketball. They're not as athletic as you see at the Power 5 conferences. But, and then you have to adjust to your players. When you recruit for North Carolina, you're going to get the top of everything, cream of the crop, at the Power 5s. But at the Division IIs, you might have a 6'5" post guy. You might have a 5'5" guard. And you just have to adjust to the players that you have. You can't throw a lob to a point guard at a Division I and expect to make that same play at the Division II. So the expectation out of plays that worked at the Division I level, they don't work the same way at the Division II level.
So, George, as we're recording this, we still find ourselves in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And sometimes I think about, I'm not going to mention it on episodes, but I feel like it wouldn't be responsible if I didn't, while we are recording this. And I think there are things that coaches are doing that other coaches can learn from. How are you currently communicating with and working with your staff and team during this time?
Well, of course, I continue to constantly communicate with my assistants. The players, everybody's went home. Right now, I'm trying to. Well, actually, I started a campaign for, and this is another subject we needed to talk a little bit about, SIAC conference. A lot of these kids are first-generational college students. They're scholarship-based. Some have been awarded help from the federal government. And so now we challenge with distance learning. My goal is to try and get every student athlete in the HBCU computers. I've had about 6 of my 13 student athletes don't have the learning devices to be able to learn. Mm-hmm. Off campus, because when they're on campus, they have the computer labs, they have friends with computers, laptops, and they got the desktop. So now, being forced to go distance learning, they don't have the devices. Some student athletes don't have Wi-Fi, a good Wi-Fi signal too. And then they got siblings who they got to share their home computers with. So it's a challenge for most of these student athletes to do this distance learning. So I've been reaching out to as many HBCUs as possible. I'm working with Dell and Microsoft to see if we can get some devices out to these student athletic departments so that they can loan them out to their student athletes so they can finish their education and stay eligible.
That's a factor that people aren't really bringing up about distance learning, and you hear about, I think, more at the secondary and elementary school level, but no one is talking about college students who are coming home to a lack of Wi-Fi or device to use.
True. So because and it came about because my challenge with my student athletes, once we had to send them home, they saying that the device they have is not working, is a dinosaur, outdated. So the challenge is to get these student athletes what they need to continue their success and be able to provide for their families someday.
Yeah, and I've been really proud, George, of how you've jumped right into the Clark Atlanta community and the greater Atlanta community and your support of HBCUs, because I feel like, you don't have to be an alum of an HBCU to care and to contribute. I feel like whether you went to an HBCU or not, we're all at least a byproduct of HBCU. I mean, I think about myself. I mean, my dad is undergrad and medical school graduate of Howard. That's direct, but even our leaders who have transformed our country and given and helped fight for so many of the rights that we have today were products of HBCU. So you don't have to be a direct alum to care. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, and exactly. I was just agreeing with what you said, and we got to do a better job to get the enrollment up for HBCUs. I was just looking at the different conferences and the teams and their enrollment. Some schools are operating with just 1,500 students, and like I said, there's historically Black colleges are a great experience for students, and we just got to give them a chance also.
Yeah. Now, the project you mentioned, I know, was something that you had kicked off way before this pandemic and distance learning, the HBCU Heroes. And I know that's your focus now, is getting computers and devices to HBCU student athletes. But what was that when you kicked it off? What was the initial goal and mission?
So the initial goal and mission was, when I accepted the job at Clark, is to try and help raise funds for the athletic department. A lot of people don't talk about it, but college sports at Black colleges, they don't get the same support, TV dollars, as white institutions. And so to get out and support a game, it's $5, $4, $6 to a game. Just showing your support for these student athletes who are asked to practice and keep their grades up with limited resources that our counterparts have. And then, like you said, I went to North Carolina. So, my experiences in college is totally different than what my student athletes go through, just the whole experience on and off the court. So when I got the job, the previous coach, Darryl Walker, was a big art collector, and we were asked to, try and continue his fundraising efforts. And I was clueless at art, collecting art and things like that. So we did it the first year. Of course, starting out fundraising and doing like that, you lose dollars. We lost money on our first event. But the passion was still there and the need was there to continue to help these athletic departments. And then as I went through my first year conference, I started seeing these, like you said, these historically Black institutions, struggling to maintain their facilities. We rebranded and said, look, not only does Clark need the support, or Morehouse, or Tuskegee, Howard, we say, look, let's do something. Use my platform as a former player. You see, Steph Curry gave a large, donation to Howard. Try to get some of these athletes and entertainers, both football, basketball, baseball, to get involved and help support some of these smaller schools. And then we rebranded the name from Arts for Athletes to HBCU Heroes, because, like you said, you don't have to go to an HBCU. I didn't go to an HBCU. A lot of people that supported us in our initiative to raise these computers didn't go to HBCUs. And my goal was, if we can give students at HBCUs a better experience, like we do at our, at the Carolinas, by the sporting events help improve the experience of students on campus. And then it brings dollars into these universities. If we can do the same thing with Black colleges, I think it would help offset some of the expenses. Students will have a lot more pride in their institutions because they have a winning sport. And the competition, brings itself between your rival schools and other schools. Experiencing the rivalry between Morehouse and Clark was a great experience. The excitement is kind of on that same level as a Duke Carolina matchup. The whole campus is shut down those days. So it's one of those experiences. That's why we rebranded to HBCU Heroes, to not just help the institution it was to help all HBCUs and try to bring awareness to it. You see Cam Newton wearing his black college sweatshirts, Chris Paul wearing his black college shirts. We just want to help and spread the word that don't forget about the small institutions that help build our country.
And George, I'm going to have a link to your HBCU Heroes website in the show notes. So how can listeners help?
You can go to hbcuheroes.org. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can donate. You can send gently used computers. Of course, clean all your info off of it. The goal is to get 6,000 computers out there and help serve. There's 100 universities out there, and of course, 100 Black HBCU schools, and they all have team sports. So we're trying to help these athletes that's in need. I know we can't help everyone, but if we can try and make a dent in the athletic population at HBCUs, I think it'd be a blessing. So you can hbcuheroes.org, and we also have social media.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to add all those links in the show notes. George, do you think we could ever see a CIAA SIAC challenge as part of this campaign?
Well, the SIAC is Division II, but I think it would be great, to challenge alumni from each institution to see how many, or their conference or their rival schools, how many they can come up with for their student athletes.
And I mean, also on the court, do you think we could see a challenge of the two conferences like that? Maybe.
Well, the problem you
see Clark and Virginia Union and Morehouse, play Bowie.
The problem that you're having, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is what's going to happen. If they don't get back to that challenge and that school pride where they play, and sometimes Division IIs don't want to play Division I's because but like A&T and Hampton, Howard could be the next school. They jump into the Sun Belt Conference or the South,
the Big South, Big South.
Yeah, so they jumping out of their conferences, and what's going to happen is they're going to be forced to follow the dollars, and then the rivalries, like you said, between North Carolina A&T and Howard, or Winston-Salem State, they're no longer going to be rivalries because they're not going to be able to play each other because they're in a different conference, and the strength of schedule, they don't want to lose to a non-conference school, even if it is an HBCU. So, in our conference, we had to play a lot of the schools down south in Florida for strength of schedule. And it leaves that, instead of us going up to Shaw or J.C. Smith, which are D2 schools, we don't get an opportunity to play them. So you go 5 or 6 years without playing, you got a generation of students who don't know anything about the rivalries or the historical matchups. So we got to get our alumni, even if you didn't go to a HBCU, to give back. Any amount helps.
And George, I like that you found something that you could be passionate about. If art was not your thing, you found something you could be passionate about. What advice would you give to coaches who are at programs where they need to raise money, other D2s, D3s, and maybe even low D1s, that have to really go out and raise money? What advice would you give to them with that type of campaign?
I think, like you said, if you find a cause and a need, and my need, I'm not a fundraiser, but I've done a great job when I know that my student athletes need it. So if I'm asking for my student athletes, it's easier to ask for, just give it to me and I give it to my program. No, my student athletes need this. So there's a need, and where there's a need, people will give. You just got to talk to them and present it the right way.
And as you said, George, that's going to pay off on the court and on the field when your student athletes are proud and of what they have, equipment, gear, devices. That's going to pay off in a very winning way.
Yeah, the student athletes they're human, just like, a normal student. When they know that their coach cares about them, he's fighting in the trenches, trying to improve their situation, they will put more out on the court. And that's what, athletes ask for. When they got a coach who they know really cares about them as a person more than them as an athlete, they're gonna give you 100%.
Well, George, thank you so much for being a guest today on Beyond the Whistle. And I also want to thank you for your friendship. And we're going to get going on some other projects. I know this episode was way past due that we've been discussing. You've got so many great ideas on giving back to communities and basketball and coaching. I'm really proud of you for all that. George, where can listeners go to connect with and follow you?
You can follow me and connect with me at hbcuheroes.org. I do have I'm on Facebook, but I don't quite follow it, get on as much as I should. I have a George Lynch Coach on IG. So I'm on social media, and I do try to respond to everyone. And I try to post things that I'm involved with. We had an event for the Final Four. We got an esports competition coming up for HBCUs. So I'll be a little bit more active now. Like you said, we got all this downtime. We got to take advantage of it.
Great. Well, George, stay healthy during all this and continue the great work you're doing down there in Atlanta. And again, thank you for being a guest on Beyond the Whistle.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Whistle. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It's the best way to stay updated on the newest episodes. Beyond the Whistle is a production of McCants Sports, a sports executive search and talent solutions firm. To learn more about McCants Sports, visit mccantsports.com.